Vance and the rest of the fellows begin to hear at 6 o'clock in the morning, their orders are very simple. They're supposed to hold their position against all comers for about 4 hours, waiting for the Union planned attack across the Stones River to take place, which will ease the pressure once about a third of the Union Army gets into the rear of the Confederates into the town of Murfreesboro. But as they're waiting for the enemy to come across into their front, they begin to hear gunfire off to the south, and that gunfire starts to get close really fast. And that's where Wilson Vance, in his account of this fighting here, can tell us what happened next. He says the roar of the fighting was on our right, which when it began was almost directly in our front. It swung more and more rapidly backward, approached us more and more nearly, till at last, to our utter amazement, we found it squarely in our right rear, and then, as in an instant, also in our left rear. The brigades to the right and the left had both given way, and we were completely surrounded. Now, in just a few short sentences, he encompasses several hours' worth of fighting. The Confederates indeed do smash the right end of the Union line, and as the hours tick away from 6 o'clock on through till about 10 in the morning, they will drive off brigade after brigade, division after division of the Union Army, and set them on the run, swinging like a door around them, trying to reach around and cut off the Union Army back along the road near the Visitor Center, the Nashville Pike. Negley's men and Miller's boys here, along with Wilson Vance, will meet the initial Confederate attacks and beat them back. They've got good cover and concealment in the woods and behind the fence. They've got artillery on either end of the line. They've got the Confederates caught in a pretty tight spot because they have to come straight up across the field in frontal assaults. But that gunfire does indeed start to come closer and closer and start to wrap around behind. And that is the brigades of General Phillip, Sheridan giving ground slowly as they kind of bend like a jackknife back until their lines are facing to the south and Negley's men are facing to the east in essentially a V-shaped formation. Once in that position, I'm sure that their commanders, Phillip Sheridan and James Negley, were probably trying to figure out how to get out of this mess, because a salient, a little V sticking out from the rest of the line, is not a good position to be in, because the enemy can essentially almost surround you. And then if he beats and breaks one or both of your lines, he can smash you into a little ball and surround you. But General William Rosecrans, the Union Army's commander, will send orders down here telling them they have to do just the opposite of what they want, that they have to stand their ground and hold that line for as long as possible. So they're outnumbered pretty close to 3-1. These men are told they must sacrifice their lives and delay nearly half the Confederate Army to buy time, to give General Rosecrans the time he needs to construct a new line of defense along the Nashville Pike that will ultimately and finally turn the tide of battle. We were in the midst of a swaying throng of fighting, cursing men, and turn which way we might, were confronted by the enemy. At first, he reluctantly gave the order to fall back, but in a moment, grasping a flag from a color sergeant, he sprang up on a rock and waved it over his head and called upon his men, "Rally here, men! We will not be driven off. If we cannot whip them, we can at least show them how men can die." The effect was electrical. From all parts of the field came the shout, "There's John F! There's John F!" And in a trice, the eager fellows formed on the line indicated, without reference to regimental organization. Down on their knees they went and fell to firing. And once they turn, they're no longer firing. The enemy comes in, gets up on top of the rocks, and as they try to work their way out, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. When these men finally cut their way out of here, this calm, peaceful scene that you see here today would be littered with the bodies of wounded and dead soldiers of both sides as they scrambled across these rocks, blood running so thick that it would run in little rivers through the cracks in the rocks and pull up in the low spots. Some Chicago soldiers said it reminded them an awful lot of the floor drains in the slaughter pens back home. And that's how this place will get its name.
This has been a History Break, brought to you by City TV and the Stones River National Battlefield.